Bluenose 2 has just returned from a long trip to Thunder Bay. She's at her pier in Lunenburg, where she'll have some major maintenance. It's time for a new main boom and foremast. Replacement of mast and spars is just one part of ongoing schooner maintenance and preservation. Senator Wilfred Moore.
With respect to a wooden boat, you've always got to do something. Some things happen, and you can't plan them. You can't say, well, I'm going to spend $10,000 on this, that's all we'll have to budget. Well, that's not the way it works. If some gear lets go or something is aged, and you've got to replace it. And the ship being a fully certified commercial vessel, these things have to be done in order to maintain our certifications. So you don't play with that. You just do what has to be done, you have it done well, and you make sure that she's in top shape for who she is and how old she is.
Yes, the bowsprit is new. The gaffs and booms are all fairly new. The hull, of course, has been all rebuilt extensively in the last 3-4 years.
Bluenose 2 is a two-masted schooner. She carries an 82-foot foremast and a 96-foot mainmast, each with a 50-foot topmast. She's a tall ship whose masts reach 150 feet to the sky. Bow to stern, she's 143 feet, with her main boom extending beyond that. That 80-foot boom, with its 4,000 square foot mainsail, must withstand tremendous force at sea. It's becoming worn, and it will be replaced. The 82-foot foremast carries 4 sails. Its working life is over and must also be replaced.
Foremast is in many ways, is the more important of the two masts. When the winds whip up to a hurricane force in the bottom, the other sails have to be taken in. The foremast will still be carrying the foresail and the jumbo jib, which are the very last sails to be taken in. Very important to have a good sturdy foremast. Once this job is done, there should be no major woodwork for the next few years now.
The topmast has been lowered and it's ready to be removed. Using ship's winches and one of the crew members' jeeps, the 50-foot topmast is gently lowered. Lowered and placed on the wharf.
We've already taken down the topmast and all its associated rigging. That's sitting on the wharf over here now. We've unhooked all the wires that lead up to the mast because there is electrical power going up there for running lights and navigation lights and spreader lights. We've ordered a brand new lifting strap to lift the mast out. It's 1-inch wire. It's got a 10-ton working load. The actual mast only weighs from 4 to 5 tons, so we have a big safety margin. Well, yesterday we lashed that on. It extends from the deck up to just below the spreaders. Big eye at each end, and that's lashed in with a special lashing called a rose lashing. Hopefully it will stay put. We've done this before, never had any problems. Below deck, the actual flooring of the ship, the cabin sole, was tight in against the base of the mast, and we had Snyder Shipyards come and cut that away so that to permit free movement at the base, because you need play in there when she comes up. We'll be looking to locate the coins that are underneath the mast as soon as we lift it up. There are some coins underneath the mast, follow the old traditions and customs. The Greek and Latin sailors of old used to want to carry their coin to buy their way across the river Styx when they died. So they always put a coin somewhere on the ship where it would be available in the event of a storm and death, avoid Hades. And the custom has carried on through the ages. And when the Olins built Bluenose 2, under the mainmast, they put a Spanish doubloon, a piece of 8, which is still there. And we will put a 1997 coin of some denomination before we put it back in. There's only a couple of things left to do. Once the crane gets here, he'll hook into our lifting strap up there, and once he's done that, we will unhook the forestay that goes down to the deck. We've already got our chain falls all hooked up, ready to do that. And then there will be one other stay to disconnect. That's the one running from the mainmast across to the foremast, the triadic stay. And that's the most difficult one to unhook, because one of our guys will have to shinny up to the very top of the mast. We'll have to bend the foremast back to permit enough slack in the stay. There's a great big shackle and a pin with a cotter pin that he has to knock out of there. And at that point, the mast will be quite unsteady, with just sort of the crane as a hook holding it steady. And then when that's done, he will come down. We will unhook the very last of the shrouds from down below, and then we can start the lift. We will actually pull it straight up till it clears the dock and swing it out onto the wharf and block it up onto the wharf, and then she'll be complete.
Who's going up?
I think it'll be Scott, the third mate. Traditionally, that's been the job done by the junior mate, so he'll be up there to do that. It's probably the hardest job that you can ever do on the Bluenose 2.
And you've done it yourself?
I've done it 2 or 3 times, yes. The foremast has been out we had it once out for repairs in the early 80s, the previous one, and then several years later it was replaced, which is this one. So that's twice, and this one has been out for repairs. So this will be its 4th time out.
And what about the mainmast? Has it been out?
The mainmast has only ever been taken out, as far as I know, for replacement, and this is the 3rd mainmast that's on there now. The original mainmast from '63 was sprung in hurricane force winds early in its career. It was replaced in the early '60s with a laminated spar, glued up, which lasted until the '80s. Then it had a bit of rot in it, and it was replaced with the one that you see there now, which is a solid piece of Douglas fir from BC. We'll be replacing the foremast with a solid piece of Douglas fir.
A 100-foot BC Douglas fir tree has been in storage for the last 10 years, waiting for this moment.
The lifespan of the masts can vary quite a bit. I've known big masts in some sailing ships to last for 50 years or more. On board Bluenose 2, we seem to be getting roughly 20 years out of them before we start getting some deterioration in the wood in some locations. As we get further along here and the trees get scarcer and scarcer, it's more difficult to get big, humongous trees, which means that the trees even the big trees from British Columbia means that you're utilizing a lot of the new growth wood on the exterior of the tree, which is not as good as the core wood in the tree. There is a difference in the cellular structure of the wood as it ages, so that the heartwood, the core wood, is way longer lasting than the outer layers of sapwood. So if you're forced to utilize the sapwood, it doesn't last as long as in the old days. The trees would have been that much bigger that they would have been paring away the exterior wood and been down to pretty well to heartwood, which tended to last longer. Here comes the crane from Halifax that we've ordered in to remove one of the 2 masts on the schooner Bluenose 2. My name's Delbe Como. I'm the mate aboard the vessel, and I have to get across to the crane operator what will take place here today. 2 years ago, we did notice some deterioration in the end of the boom, where there's some shivs cut right into the boom for the topping lift, and as soon as you open up holes in the boom, it opens the way to fresh water to get in. There was some deterioration there. We did scarf some new wood in, but again, we were unable to get every last bit of it out. And that boom there dates back to 1981, so it's getting to the last of its lifespan, and we will replace it this winter as well.
The crane will be used to do the simple thing first. Hoist the main boom off the vessel and set it on the wharf. You really have to live in Lunenburg and watch the ongoing restoration and maintenance needed for Bluenose 2 to fully appreciate the complex skills and the knowledge that it takes to keep her sailing. Now that the main boom has been removed, it's time to tackle the big job, removing the foremast.
And I have to get across to the crane operator what will take place here today, because the mast is very heavy and it's a delicate operation. Here's the mast that has to come out. I think we're ready to go. Here's Scott Weber, third mate. He'll have to do the most difficult job of all, at the very top of the mast. Cliff Knickel, he's our senior deckhand. He'll be going up to assist Scott. And he's now climbing up the rigging, which is now quite loose because some of it has been let go already. Scott's going up. Rigging's difficult to climb when it's this loose. Now they're hooking up the crane to the lifting strap. Now Scott has to climb all the way to the masthead. The mast is fairly wobbly at this stage and a lot less steady than it is when all the rigging is up. So he's taking his time. I know how he feels. It's the first time he's doing this, and I've done it before, and first time it's always a bit scary. He's made it. He's going to try to relax a bit. There, he's got the pin. He's got the pin out and the stay is now free. They are wearing safety harnesses in the event of a mishap, but it would still be a nasty little fall even with a harness. He's glad to be back on the spreaders.
The mast is even more wobbly now with the triadic stay released, and Scott descends.
Here comes the easy part.
Traditional bosun's chair.
Job well done.
That was easy, wasn't it, Scott?
Good job, Scott.
There now comes the critical moment, the actual lift. It's more or less out of our hands and into the hands of the crane operator. We're apprehensive to make sure everything will hold together as he actually lifts. Here it comes, though. Shrouds and rigging will have to be unlashed and removed from the bottom because we will be utilizing the same standing rigging on the new mast. Here at the masthead is the carvings of the initials and names of the seamen who set topsails up there. Tanya was one of the first female crew members to set topsails. Brooke from Bedeck. Jeff from Pictou. It's the only place where they're allowed to carve their initials. Unhook the bridle. Hey, a new access point to the forecastle. There's the step that we saw. And the coins that have come to light after all these years. A bit tarnished from being there so long.
Yeah, I guess that's
Bluenose 2 launched at Lunenburg in S. Bluenose built 1921. Scotia Trawler Shipyards, which will be forming the new mast, have sent over their foreman to get the measurements of the old mast. Since they'll be utilizing all the metal work and the standing rigging from from this mast on the new one. It's absolutely critical to make everything fit just right. The mast has to be exactly duplicated. By the time they're over, they'll have several pages of measurements. The new mast will be shaped at the shipyard that built both Bluenose and Bluenose 2. Bluenose 1 was built in 1921 outside on this very location that we're looking at, and Bluenose 2 in 1963 built inside this building. This is where we see the new tray for the new mast. It was brought in from British Columbia, Vancouver Island, 10 years ago. And here they're lining up to find the exact center of the tree. It's important to find the exact heart of the tree. That's the place that has to be at the center of the new mast. From the center of both ends, the exact center, they put in a chalk line that will mark the exact line along the outer edge of the tree and see to work from this line. Since a tree is never perfect in nature, to get the right taper and shape, you must first make the tree square. So they line, from the center line, they mark off the sides on either side, and then they will proceed to flatten one whole side of it. They then cut away the excess wood with a power saw. You can see how the helper is tapping the tree to let the workman know when he's approaching the line on the far side. And then a worker comes behind and uses a broad axe to chip away all this excess wood. Now this leaves a very rough surface, and when that's done they roll the tree to its side, where they will further refine it using adze, which is a very traditional tool used for this purpose. They chip away the wood, constantly checking to make sure that it comes out quite flat. It's important to keep the adze razor sharp. It's said that a good adzeman can pick a coin off a wooden floor without nicking the floor underneath. See how it's a tedious process, a lot of wood chips. Keeps checking to make sure he's staying within the lines and staying flat. Here you see how they're now working on another side till they get 4 square sides. Now they're up to 4 sides. Smooth it out. From 8 sides, it's chalked in 4 16 sides. By the time it gets up to 16, it's getting fairly close to round. And from here, they put aside the adzes and the saws and do mostly planing to bring it perfectly round. The lower part of the mast will be left 8-sided, where it goes through the deck in order to wedge it. And here it is a month later, ready to go back into Bluenose 2. The deckhands are tightening up the ironwork that was forged here in Lunenburg and when the ship was built. And at the same time, they're putting on tarred rope servings over the wire to protect the wire where it goes around the mast, using a serving mallet to put it on good and tight. This big metal band here is where the topmast comes up through from the bottom, and it's held actually in this big ring here, which we call the cap iron. That will only be done after this lower mast is stepped, and we'll be using a big crane to put this lower mast, but the topmast will be sent up. It's also a fairly big tray. It's over 50 feet long. We use our anchor winch to shove it up through here, and then it's held. The weight of it is held with these big metal rods, which is called a hanging fid. This metal band here sits right across the cap here, and then the rods go down, and then there's a bolt through the heel of the topmast, so that the weight is actually being held down from the cap iron here. First time's aloft, when you're hanging on to this gear, it's so scary that you're afraid that these rings might pull out from your weight, but they're actually geared to hold tons and tons of weight, and there's no way they're going to come away with 200 pounds of body weight. But nonetheless, you have to work up confidence in all this gear when you're working up there. And here she goes at last. Brand new mast for the Bluenose 2. It will have to be there for many years to come. The foremast is the many ways is the more important of the two masts. When the winds whip up to a hurricane force and above and the other sails have to be taken in, the foremast will still be carrying the foresail and the jumbo jib, which are the very last sails to be taken in. It's very important to have a good sturdy foremast. And here she's going to be lowered back through the hole in the deck. Captain Walters is down to supervise. Down she goes. And under the mast is the new 97 coin from the Canada-Russia Hockey Series and all the other coins that were there the day she was launched. And Scott will have to go back up to the very masthead to rehook up the triadic stay from the mainmast. Up he goes. Since the shrouds are tools for him to climb on, he goes up in the bosun's chair, gets down on the spreader, and then climbs up to the masthead. Where he is, he now has to replace that big metal pin. He's doing the famous Scott swim here, getting himself psyched up and hooking the pin in. Now when he's on his way back down, it's a 1.5 ton come along he's pulling on. And there she is. The only thing left to do is to unhook the crane.
Delby Como is a seagoing veteran.
This is the completion of my 23rd season.
And how many new bows and new sterns and so on have you seen?
I've seen 2 new bows, rebuilds, 2 new sterns, 2 decks, 2 major hull repairs in the planking and the frames. All the spars replaced, all the standing rigging since I've been aboard. All been replaced at least once.
So she's coming up to her 35th year and she's brand new.
She's as new as you can make her today, I guess.
But the day's work isn't over yet. There's a topmast to reinstall. And Scott goes up again, and that's the 3rd time today. The topmast slips up through the keeper ring that Delby showed us earlier when the foremast was on the dock. And he stands on the painted cap of the mast where former crew members have carved their initials. He begins installing the hoops for the topsails, the running gear, and the fittings for the standing rigging. Only when all of this is complete will Bluenose be ready for sea again. But while this work on Bluenose 2 was going on, another ship was alongside. HMS Matthew, a replica of John Cabot's ship. This was the 600th anniversary of Cabot's historic voyage across the Atlantic to North America. HMS Matthew is in Lunenburg to take on supplies and make some repairs of her own before sailing back to England. After watching the expert crew of Bluenose 2 at work, Matthew's crew asked Delby to come aboard and give them some advice. First thing you know, he's in Matthew's rigging, renewing the chafing guard on the stays. They wore away on the trip to America and were damaging the sails. They'll be good as new when Delby's finished. The images of famous ships are often used on stamps. A Newfoundland stamp celebrates Matthew, and several stamps have been made in honor of Bluenose. As Matthew prepares to sail from her berth beside Bluenose 2, her gunnery officer prepares his cannon to salute the port of Lunenburg. crowds on this October day have lots to watch. The refitting of Bluenose 2 and the departure of Matthew. All in a day's work for Chief Mate Delby Como and his crew on Bluenose 2.